confirmed Mary's place of birth as a Hochil. Her baptism record should still be held there. But before he leaves Ballymena, Graham checks the baptism register of Mary's own children. It reveals another secret about her life.
So you're looking for Reynolds, obviously.
This is Margaret Jane. When was she born?
She was born on the 5th of December 1895 and then baptised 30th of January.
Hello. That was quite a tight wedding dress. She was so far gone when she got married.
There's only a month.
A month? I mean, that does really shock me, because even now you'd get a bit of a move on down the aisle. My grandmother would have been mortified if she'd known this, that her mother had been 8 months pregnant going down the aisle. Married. Because you know what I mean, my grandmother was so strict. Even my mother would be so awkward. Well, that really is a bombshell. You can't imagine the shame of that. You know, to be 8 months pregnant walking down an aisle. I suppose what I'm thinking about is, good, I'm not the first person to bring shame on the family. But in terms of unconventional living, you can't imagine it being the happiest day of her life. Okay, there could be a theory that she found herself pregnant and went hunting for a man to marry her and make a decent woman of her. I don't believe that. You'd have to be a very nice man to walk someone down the aisle at 8 months. So I'm sure he was the father. Maybe she just stuck her head in the sand. You know, this is the biggest problem imaginable. I'm pregnant, I have no husband, I'm living at home. I've been in that mindset where you just thought, if I just ignore this problem for as long as possible, maybe it'll go away. But in the end, you know, they bit the bullet and they did it. They got married. It seems so long ago, and yet it wasn't. You know, because I'm thinking, this isn't generations ago. This is my grandmother's parents.
Graham and Nicola are on their way to Mary's birthplace, just 5 miles down the road from where she was married.
That's the Presbyterian church.
Well, I'm intrigued why my grandmother would choose to use the name Dewey instead of Logan, which was her name, and where did she get Dewey from, what did it mean to her? And I'm heading into a Hochil now, her birthplace, just outside Ballymena, to hopefully find out. Oh, there's a Logan funeral services. And there's Logan the butcher.
Oh, there's Logan's.
Oh, Logan, there's a Logan's, yeah.
Parish records from the time of Mary's birth are still held at the Hochil church.
Okay, so initially we're looking for baptism records.
Yes, we're looking for the baptism of Mary
Logan or Dewey.
Or Dewey, yes, because we don't know what name she would have been baptised under.
I'll do this one if you do that one. Higgintodd, no. Oh, here it is.
Okay.
Logan. Mary Jane, that is her. 1872.
No, Father. All of the information that we have about Mary Logan fits. And Mary Jane, when you were looking at the baptismal records, she did record herself as Mary Jane a number of times.
Yeah.
And Margaret as well. Mary Jane's mother was Margaret Logan. Now, Mary Jane named her first child Margaret. Yes. Which was not uncommon for people to take the name of their mother for the first female child.
Mind you, there were only about 5 names in the world, it seems.
For people to use.
Mary's baptism record shows that her mother was Margaret Logan. But she was unmarried, and there is no listing of the father's name. Graham and Nicola search the records for Mary's brothers and sisters to see if a father is registered there.
Oh, here's a Logan.
And that's a Margaret Logan.
And it's a Samuel.
Mm-hmm.
The register shows that Margaret had a son 2 years before Mary was born.
And there's something written above the...
Oh yes, what's that now? Something dewy.
Fred, but it looks like it has been scratched out a little bit.
Samuel's father is recorded as Fred Dewey. But there is no record of a marriage. Could Fred also be Mary's father?
That would certainly explain why Mary is using the name Dewey, if he was also her father.
But why, if he was her father, didn't she put him down on the marriage cert?
Well, it was scratched out here, so it may have been that he didn't want to be recorded as the father. It's possible that they weren't.
just
It
living-
seems unlikely that they were married if we've got two surnames.
When Margaret was giving birth to Mary and Samuel in the 1870s, less than 3% of children were born to unmarried mothers. Such women were often ostracized or driven from their community. But sometimes, if the family rallied round, a scandal could be avoided. Still, it was a rare and defiant woman who bore more than one child outside marriage. Graham and Nicola continue to search the register to see if Margaret had any other illegitimate children.
Oh, there's a Logan.
And
George.
that's George. And again, there's no father's name recorded
And
here.
no
Occupation. And that's 1876. It's strange. I mean,
Because again, this is 4 years since she had that other child.
Yeah, and she's now had three children
children.
outside of marriage. We're
And-
presuming they will all be the children of Frederick.
Well, it's weird that the only whiff of Frederick is the
It's
first
the
one.
first one.
Was she stupid enough to have more children? You think 3 might have taught her a lesson. She might have found out how it was happening by then. Logan. Andrew in
It's
78.
1878.
It's amazing, isn't it?
There's four. Well,
Now, is this unusual?
this would be quite unusual, yes.
You know, you
because
get away with one.
normally find that...
You could hide the bump and maybe go visit an aunt. But
Yes.
4 kids over a space of 8 years.
Yeah, and she's living in the same place. And she's obviously involved in the community, so it is something presumably that's been accepted in the area, or been accepted by her family.
It's amazing. You know, my great-great-grandmother, as far as we can see, had at least 4 children out of wedlock. Growing up in rural southern Ireland, where Catholicism was a greater influence, the things I found out today would have been scandalous. You know, Margaret would have been, either she'd gone to stay with an aunt in Galway or something. You know, she'd have just disappeared for 9 months and come back with no baby because it was up for adoption, or she'd have gone to England and she'd have had an abortion. So, like I said, I'm sort of astonished, but equally kind of chuffed, really, that they didn't behave like that, because they were obviously genuinely nice people. You know, a little bit easy, a little bit slutty, but nice. You know, and they took care of these kids, and there must have been a really strong sense of community. I'm so glad now, because before I thought that my great-grandmother must have had a terrible wedding. 8 months pregnant in that big church in Ballymena. And now you realise she was the golden girl. She was getting married. And she didn't even have a baby yet. So Ireland's obviously a more complicated place than I thought. You know, like, I thought up here in the north was very kind of black and white. That, you know, I suppose because of the religious bigotry and all of that, you just thought it was real kind of batten down the hatches and very hard line, and certainly that's my impression of it. And clearly, that isn't what it was like. It was a far more ebb and flow religious community than I ever knew.
Having solved the Logan Dewey mystery and learned about his mother's family in the north of Ireland, Graham wants to explore his Protestant roots in the south. So he turns to his father Billy Walker and grandfather George, who were born in County Wicklow.
Well, I'm heading down south now to Carnew, which is the village where my father's family are from, the Walkers. And, well, I think it's quite an odd little village, but anyway, my father loved it. And he'd always stop off there and show us where he grew up and went to school and everything. And what's interesting about Carnew is it's a real Protestant enclave in the south. And in the north, obviously, Catholic Protestant thing is very overt. But in the south, it's kind of subtler, where you're just made to feel slightly less Irish because of it, and sort of other. And I'm looking forward to finding out how far back our family, but also indeed kind of Protestantism, goes back into the roots of Irish history, because clearly we're not from anywhere else. You know, I'm Irish, I'm nothing else. And it just, I want to know how deeply enmeshed in kind of Irish history we are.
About 60 miles south of Dublin, Carnew was built by English settlers in the 17th century. Its high proportion of Protestants set it apart from other Irish communities. Even today, Carnew's Protestant population is 4 times the average for a southern Irish village. Graham's grandfather, George Walker, was a central figure within the community, as sexton of the local Protestant church.
I don't have any really strong impression of my grandfather because he died when I was still quite young, so in my head he's just kind of a generic old granddad, really. But I do remember being brought to this church by my dad when we visited Carnew. Now, if I remember, this is the Walker pew, number 20, because that had been near the back because he was the sexton. You know, to people arrive late or whatever, hand out the books. And if I remember, when I was a kid, yeah, there's a BW, which would be my father, that would be Billy. Don't know who that is. Oh, there's another BW here. Clearly he was very bored. But I was like, you're kind of like, it's the family pew. Who could BW? I wonder who did that. Every family had their own pew. So ours was a bit ghetto. It's a bit street back here with our graffiti. I mean, Grandad must have been livid when he saw this.
To learn more about his grandfather George, Graham is meeting his father's sister, Aunt May, who's come over from England.
Yeah.
An old friend of hers, John Wilkinson, also remembers George from his childhood.
Now, this is Grandad and Granny's grave over here, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So.
But God, this has all changed. There used to be trees and. He was sexton here, so that was bell ringing.
Yeah. Yes,
and would he have
and the graves.
He dig the graves.
I love digging the graves.
Yeah.
And if anybody like the school,
I loved it.
Yeah.
Somebody's dead.
He
Hooray!
did. He took a great pride. Took a great pride in the grave.
Yeah.
And then he was the pound keeper.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
So you had to pay him a fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, if somebody's cattle got out or something like that, and they were wrong, they were put in the pound, and you had to pay my father to get the cattle out of the pound.